persists and doubles down on these fake, imaginary taxes.
That's right. He says it's imaginary, but it's in his budget. Does that mean the budget is a fictional document? Here it is on page 106.
If the Conservatives want the truth, we'll tell them the truth.
Yesterday from the Prime Minister really freaked these Conservatives out because they saw the ambition in that speech. And not only did they see it in that speech today, as the Prime Minister stood with the Premier investing in new nuclear to ensure the jobs of today and the future, they know that the youth...
The only thing that's revolting are those answers.
Speaker, there's no lessons from these Conservatives. Trust me on that, Mr.
It's too bad that minister didn't write the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, because it wouldn't have bored and depressed to misery that has built up over the last 10 years. Mr. Speaker, young people want to have homes. They want to have jobs. They want to have hope. They want a budget that is affordable so they can have a life that is affordable. Will the Prime Minister introduce that budget so that Canadians can restore the promise of their country?
And we decide what comes next.
Canada know that this government has their back. It will continue. There's going to be a powerful statement for the young people of Canada.
Driving inflation. The more Liberals spend, the more it costs Canadians at the grocery store. 25% of Canadians are using food banks because they can't afford to eat. So when will the Prime Minister finally get his inflationary deficits under control so Canadians can put food on the table?
Mr. Speaker, Conservative members pretend to care about food insecurity, but then they call feeding children garbage.
Mr. Speaker, what's garbage was that answer?
Did the Prime Minister see the ad before it went out?
Of course there are too many people living in poverty in Canada, but there are significant initiatives being put in place by this government.
Being serious means being honest and telling Canadians.
Canada's economy is in fact growing, Mr. Speaker.
Out of control spending on consultants. Last year alone, over $20 billion on well-connected Liberal insiders getting contracts. And this year, I think the number said that it's going to go as high as $25 billion. Why won't they put Canadians first? Instead of asking young people to make sacrifices, why won't they cut out their well-connected friends, put Canadians first, and deliver a budget that Canadians can actually afford?
Madam Speaker, it's impressive the Liberals are actually recognizing Christmas. Canadians are being asked to pull the wagon through the mud while Liberal cronies ride comfortably on top. The government isn't worried about families lining up at food banks. They're too busy lining the pockets of insiders. They're not bothered with cutting home prices. They're too focused on cutting checks to bumbling bureaucrats. They don't care about rising debt and inflationary deficits so long as the money keeps flowing to the Liberal elites. When will this Prime Minister stop using tax dollars?
The House, the answer is clear, Mr. Speaker. We will take no lessons from the Conservative.
Spending. This is how we build the strongest economy in the G7. Tomorrow's budget will empower Canadians because this is your country and we decide what comes next.
Minister talks like the government's money belongs to him, and they call these taxes imaginary. They aren't imaginary when you're staring at your own credit card bill. The government's job is to listen to Canadians, not lecture them or gaslight them or threaten an election to distract them from the failures. Instead of trying to cause a costly election on a costly budget, why not an affordable budget for an affordable life?
Don't lie, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals have sacrificed the future of young Canadians. The deficit is a massive $80 billion this year. More inflation, higher costs. The Prime Minister promised he would spend less and again broke his promise and is spending more. He's forcing young Canadians to sacrifice more so he can spend more. After 10 years of this Liberal government, housing costs have doubled. Food bank usage has doubled. Youth employment is the lowest it's been in 25 years. The cost on the interest of this government's debt is more than GST revenues or what goes to provinces in healthcare transfers. And today, the finance minister had a choice to make. Food prices could have came down. They could have been cheaper, but again, he refused to do this. The Liberals kept in place their industrial carbon tax, their food packaging tax, the clean fuel standard, and added $18 billion of inflationary fuel to the fire. Why did the finance minister leave in place Liberal hidden food taxes and force higher food costs on single mothers, seniors, and young Canadians?
On this side of the House, the answer is clear, Mr. Speaker. We will take no lessons from the Conservative. Mr. Speaker, we made a clear choice. We chose Canadian, Mr. Speaker. That is the thing. I know the budget has many pages. Maybe my colleague missed a chapter, Mr. Speaker. But let me help him because we have a bit of time. We have a bit of time. Mr. Speaker, we made the choice to invest in Canadians. We made the choice to protect and build our communities. We made the choice to invest in our young people. We made the choice to invest in our worker. We made the choice to invest in housing. We made the choice to invest in infrastructure. We made the choice to invest in productivity and competitiveness. We made the choice to invest in our defense, Mr. Speaker. And I hope that they will see and their consumer will be watching. Will they make the choice to invest in Canadians as well? On this side of the House, the answer is clear, Mr. Speaker. We will take no lessons from the Conservative, but we'll take lessons from history.
Persists and doubles down on these fake imaginary taxes.
That's right. He says it's imaginary.
Hey, there we go. Welcome to the nap. Sorry about the delay. More streaming software issues today. And I'm looking at my streaming software right here, and I'm getting a lot of choppiness. Now, I noticed that it was about 30 seconds after I started going live that YouTube kicked in, and then it took another minute before Rumble kicked in. And my God, am I ever choppy? Am I coming out that choppy? Yes, I am. Well, let me try something here. So, crazy thing. I don't know what's going on. I think I might have figured it out. I had to figure it out yesterday. Rumble was working just fine. I was streaming to all the platforms. So let me fix this outpush issue here. I think I might have this fixed. 5. My VPN. My VPN would not let me connect to Rumble Studio, which is too bad. And for some reason, I'm looking here. And I'm disconnected again. My software just disconnected me. What is going on? Yeah, so my software just keeps disconnecting me from Rumble Studio as well. Something else I'm going to have to try to fix. Okay. We were not having these issues a week ago, and then all of a sudden, let's get into this show, shall we? Because we're running out of time, and the House is going to be sitting for question period in 15 minutes, and of course, they're never on time. They're always doing statement by members. The Speaker's running his own show. And then he has an agenda to follow. He has a certain amount of time. You gotta give credos to the Speaker. And this one's doing a really good job. Actually, he's letting both sides do their performances, and he's not losing his issues. He's not treating them like children. He's just like, okay, are you done now? All right, let's move on. Which is the way we've gotten used to speakers. Well, the way I've gotten used to seeing speakers ever since they started televising procedures in a lower house back in the early 80s. I don't know if you can get it on UFP or UHP back then. Okay, enough of that. Let's move into our first scene and fade. And not fade. Now, because we need a laugh, things all just can't be serious all the time. Sure, we got a desktop audio on.
Whatever happened to predictability? The milkman, the paperboy, evening TV. Everywhere you look, everywhere there's a heart, a hand to hold on
to. Why is the only Liberal plan to spend?
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal plan is to invest.
It is time to invest in the future of our country. It has never been more appropriate to invest in the future of our country.
That's why our economic plan, it is really at its heart about investing in Canadians.
That's what we're proposing to Canadian, generational investment in our future, Madam Speaker.
We're not spending that amount of money, we're investing that amount of money.
If you have an X account, give this guy a follow. This didn't make me fall off the chair, but I had a good belly laugh. It's fun. It's entertaining, and we need to be entertained. We need to have some happiness once in a while, because then we have to get serious. Right? There's a little post there today. This just kind of made sense as well. It's no longer Liberal versus Conservative. It's Canada versus communism, and that's a battle Canada must win. I've said it often enough on this channel. Cultural Marxism has taken over every level of government and society. They've been teaching DEI in the schools for years. I think I had a video yesterday of Camille Paglia. I hope I got to that video. I think I did. Where she predicted. And it was just 30 years ago. She was having an interview with Charlie Kirk. No, not that Charlie Kirk, different Charlie Kirk. I think there was a guy on PBS. And she was basically telling them exactly that mindset that you now see being thrown at us by all the students who've gone through their little mind mill machine. Oh, so we have an update on the ostriches. Supreme Court ruling came in, and the bird crunching machine is in overdrive. Just as we expected, they're not going to follow common sense. They haven't tested the bird. They're just going to go ahead and destroy the property. Before I get to the next thing, Creighton, David Creighton, Creighton's Right, had a short little interview here with Nicholas Hulscher. He was one of the main leading voices, and still is today, trying to find some justice for the COVID-19 vaccine injured and unalived, and as well trying to get the industry to come to terms with the damage that they keep insisting on doing by wanting to continue to push this deadly toxin out. Because as you know, it's still a requirement in the Canadian Armed Forces to have three of these jabs. And but if you get injured, you got to go to the failed vaccine injury support program. Anyway, this is in keeping with what they're doing with the birds. Same bloody thing with the birds. They just said, oh, we're going to do a PCR test, polychain reaction test on these 2 dead carcasses, which we've proven in the past. And of course, the guy who developed the PCR test said, you're using them for this. Because you can get any result you want. Just keep running the cycles over and over again until you get the result you want. You can get COVID off the surface of a watermelon if you want. Just keep running the cycles high enough. We have no idea how many cycles they ran those tests. And besides, it was on 2 dead carcasses. And since then, the flock survived. Which means they had natural immunity. But as you know, Big Pharma can't have that. And they are one of the controlling mechanisms behind the World Health Agency of the regulations that the CFIA decided to loosely follow, because they were supposed to allow the farmers to continue with the husbandry until the animals were slaughtered, and they even decided not to do that. No, they had to spend $100,000 a day plus bring in a battalion, sorry, not a battalion, a platoon of RCMP officers. All of this because they wouldn't test the birds, because the ideology is more important than anything else. They have no respect for life, no respect for property, only the ideology.
Importance of the antibodies. They miss the importance of all the research efforts that can be made, of the scientific advancement of understanding avian influenza. You know, they claim they're so worried about it, you know, jumping to humans, but then they don't bother to do anything about it, particularly in large number of birds that have been recovered, which is very rare, by the way. You won't find animals that have been recovered quite often because they murder all of them, right, at all these farms. And so this is now the opportunity to look. And, you know, this is the equivalent of, you know, say, you know, a nursing home gets infected, gets a flu outbreak, right? So the whole nursing home, they get the flu, and then they recover. And then a year later, after all the nursing home residents have recovered, the government goes in and exterminates all of the elderly individuals, right? So that's what this is. It's no different. It's no different. And so that's just how bad this really is.
Yeah, that's how bad it is. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, how can you compare birds to human beings?" Well, we're talking about where this is going, right? We've already got MAID in play, and they want to expand that. A little piece on that as well. Before we get into that, David's show this morning. It was right after the court ruling, and he was scheduled to come on and do his show. And as the show started, we got a call from Katie, one of the soon-to-be former farmers.
Yes, yeah, I can try.
Okay, can you, 10 minutes from now?
Yeah, I'll try. We're just waiting for Omar. They're setting up to kill our animals. So
I know.
Just need to...
I know. I won't take up much of your time. Just, can you do 5 or 10 minutes?
No.
You can hear the pain in her voice. And you've been fighting this for so long, since December last year. They've been trying to save their birds that are not for consumption. They're not for meat consumption. We've had these birds for decades. They had a flock of wild geese fly in winter on their property. They figured that's when their birds got infected. So they treated all the water continually that was on their land that the birds might have access to with hydrochloroquine. And all the birds got better. And they all survived. They lost a few birds to the bird flu, but the rest of them all survived, all got better, and now aren't infected, aren't infectious. But of course they said, oh, no, they all have to be destroyed. And of course, they will continue to do this. The CFIA will continue to do this every single time, because that's how the world directs them. Oh, one gets it, you got to wipe out the whole thing. And then you ask them, well, what about the wildlife? They all have the bird flu. How come you're not going and exterminating? Oh, well, you can't touch the wildlife. Right, so you're not going to do anything about the problem that actually causes the bird flu, which of course you couldn't anyway. But you're just going to destroy people's lives. Because the farmers aren't getting compensation. We've been through this before. Now, this turned into such a gong show that CFIA has been removing all the carcasses because they certainly didn't want that imaging. That's why they have to set up fencing, stop people from flying drones in the area. They were knocking out the cameras on neighbors' properties. They would refuse the neighbors to even go on their own property. A complete bully network. People had to go up on a hillside nearby with telescopes to try to zoom in and start counting the birds. And then they realized that they were already starting to cull them before they got the order. Let's do through a quick refresh again. CFIA. This law that was brought in because of Bill S-11 that was tabled in 2009 by a senator that was appointed by Harper. 2 years later, after studying the bill was passed, 2011, and at which point it gave the CFIA the ability to create its own legislation, the CSFA legislation, I believe it's called, And that in turn, that legislation that they created details all this stuff in association with the World Health Organization and is not answerable to anybody except the minister. Now, of course, you can go to the courts, but the courts are just going to default to the minister because it says so in the legislation. This legislation basically says, we are in charge, we know better, nobody else can tell us what to do. And then they passed it. They passed it in 2019. Now, of course, by then the Liberals are in power. Another thing they did in 2019, by the way, folks, is that for your public service announcements in 2019, the Liberals also made it legal for the press to lie to you without a fine, because in the past, before 2019, the press had to be truthful. If the press went out of its way to publish false information, they could be fined. But they took that rule away, and then they brought in this, the Qualified Canadian Journalism Organization. That's right. So 95% of your mainstream media out there is all QCJO, and they don't wear an armband to tell you who they're working for. No, they don't. No, they follow the Liberal propaganda. You see the little corner up here, CRA sign-in. That means that they are now official allowable journalism in Canada. And if you don't have that, well, then of course you can't be part of the press gallery either. Oh, no, the press gallery, of course, self-appointed, allowed to exist there because of the Liberals. And the Liberals are going to say, oh, it's arm's length, we have nothing to do with them. Yeah, that's right, sure, whatever. But you don't allow independent journalists, of course, unless they are part of this. And that means that that's close to about 30 grand a year per staff member that we're giving out of our pockets. Did you know you were paying journalists to lie to you? Yeah, least they could do is wear an armband. Okay, well, let's get to that little story that we want to follow up on regarding this death cult that we have in Canada that keeps growing bigger and bigger, and how very little respect the people on the left have for life.
I wrote a Substack on this because I don't think people really understand what's happening to the disabled and to children in Canada, so let me help educate you. Apparently, according to the Quebec government and other people, some lives aren't worth living, especially our disabled children. So they told me that this was not happening, and we know that to be a lie. Why? Because we've proved it now. They said Canada doesn't do this, that's just conspiracy theory, Kelsey. And of course, most people try to make me look out to be crazy, but now this week, especially after my Jillian Michaels interview and some others, including my Senate testimony, it's become abundantly clear that I'm not crazy. I'm just saying the quiet part out loud. Here's our reality. Prominent Canadian bioethicists are already arguing that doctors should be allowed to euthanize, euthanize severely disabled newborns. Okay, so we're not talking about abortion.
This is exactly what the Nazis did. Right? Useless eaters. Oh, let's get rid of those useless eaters. I want you to keep listening to Kelsey here. She's a former captain of the Canadian Armed Forces. Couldn't get any help with her PTSD. Managed to find some help. She was having it pretty bad. And she's still alive. Now she's helping others. And she recently had some testimony in committee. And it shocked the hell out of them. And you should really listen to what she has to say on how they unalive you through MAID. Right? If you think it's peaceful, it's not. You basically drown. And there's nothing you can do, and you're paralyzed.
Children that are born and living and breathing. And then the doctor walks over and decides to kill them. So if that doesn't make your skin crawl, I literally don't know what else I could say that actually does. Top medical journals are publishing papers defending this so-called after-birth abortion. That is called murder, in case anybody's got that confused. See, Parliament has been exploring extending medical assistance in dying, which is MAID, which is euthanasia, which is killing. Laws to mature minors. Now, that's an oxymoron because we also know that 12-year-olds can't make a decision about their hormones, let alone make a decision to die. They're going to, this is what they want. This is what they've been expanding. This isn't conjecture. They've literally been lobbying. Dying with Dignity, CanMap has been lobbying the Canadian government to do this. You can actually go on their own websites and read it yourself. This is not me like making stuff up. I'm literally just finding data and reading it to you. I'm not making anything up. They do it all for me. That's what's terrifying. They want to start this around the same time the MAID for mentally ill only, which is in 2027. And that's terrifying because hospitals are already making end-of-life
across the country to advance these
under the
projects
language of withdrawal of care. And if you think that this is weird, it's a cultural shift and it is not harmless in any way. And if you're not paying attention, I do hope you start now.
Are you ready to discover the secret to affordable premium smokes? Tired of spending an arm and a leg for government tax cigarettes? At Smoke Cargo.
There we go. Go to our channel and subscribe. Listen to the rest of the interview. What can I say? We have a government that does not care for life. And we know this because they had no compunctions about pushing out there a fraudulent vaccine that injured and killed a lot of people, and then wasting money on a vaccine injury support program that failed, and people still aren't getting any help from that failure. And they've ignored the whole thing. No accountability whatsoever. Sorry, just watching the screen down here. We still have statement by members. We're building a mountain of skulls in Canada. Everything that they did harmed and injured and increased the amount of deaths in Canada. 76,000 plus people expired in healthcare waiting lists. 76,000. Wasn't like that in 2015. 50,000 plus through harm reduction, overdoses. Those people aren't coming back, let alone the damage that the ongoing harm reduction continues to do to society. With all your zombies everywhere. This wasn't happening before 2015. No, this is a far left phenomena that Canada keeps voting in over and over again, 4 times in a row now. We must have more death and destruction and misery on our streets, and all funded by our own bloody money. I wish we had time to go to that Joe Rogan piece that I had. It basically explains how these cultural Marxists work. And it's all in there, in the ideology. It goes all the way, if you just read Marx, my God, was he ever prolific? We've covered how much stuff that he wrote. It's just insane, the volumes that he wrote. But basically, this is how it goes. The truth is like a pie crust. It's made to be broken. Right? So they will lie to you. They will say, oh, no, these things will not happen if we implement these programs. It's there to help people. And then the data finally comes out and goes, you lied about everything. It did the exact opposite, like we told you it would. And then I said, well, it's the end result that's important. I said, but the result is horrible. Yes, but the result now is not the result that we want later. Right? Because we have to go through these growing pains in order to achieve this transformation of society. Right? You can't do that without breaking a few eggs. This is how they will sell it to you. So every policy failure, they will either ignore or sell it as a success. Every single one. QCJO. Oh, we still statements by members here? Or is he responding? Because when Kevin starts talking, you don't know if he's talking about a statement or if he's just engaged in stupidity. Let's see what he's saying.
That's why we have a national school program that's going to be there for over 400,000 children. It is about...
These guys celebrating poverty. They keep calling the Conservatives bad for wanting to destroy the food lunch program. And that's not what they're voting against for. They're voting against this communism because they're normalizing poverty. And we are starting. So that was an answer? No, I guess. Let's go back and make sure that we didn't miss the first question. I'm not used to question period starting on time. That was a statement by member. No. So it was just Kevin spouting off. Instead of actually recognizing somebody in his constituency, which is a really good time to do by statements by members, he decided to go in and celebrate his communism by saying how good it is that the federal government now has to feed your children because 2.2 million people are going to the food banks right now on a regular basis. 1 in every 4 Canadians is skipping meals because they can't afford to or because they're saving food for their children. That's our liberal present. Right, let's get into this.
promised Canadians that he'd get the deficit under control, that he'd lower our debt and lower inflation. Instead, he's blown an $80 billion hole in the budget. The debt is climbing, inflation is climbing, and he's added $90 billion in new spending. That's over $5,000 for every family. Every dollar that the Prime Minister spends costs Canadians in higher taxes, higher inflation, and more expensive debt. With this budget, Canadians are paying champagne prices for tap water results. So why is he asking them to pay more?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'll refer to the previous comments of the honourable member from Winnipeg North. This budget is about building this great country. And what this budget shows is that with the $1 trillion of investment that we are going to catalyze, we are going to put more than $3,000 in the pocket of every Canadian by the end of this decade.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Speaker, they're not investing in the next generation. They're borrowing from it. This Prime Minister is on track to be the most expensive in Canada's history. The only ones cashing in on it are bankers. Interest payments on the national debt will cost Canadians $55 billion this year. That's more than this government spends on health care and more than it collects in GST. Every dollar that Canadians pay in GST doesn't go to doctors or nurses or hospitals. It goes to bankers. So why is the Prime Minister so determined to make sure that bankers get better care than patients?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this budget preserves the health transfer to the provinces, over $29 billion. This budget puts $5 billion into health infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, this budget has the lowest net debt to GDP in the G7. It has the lowest deficit projected, and the cost of interest borrowing is lower than when the Conservatives were in government.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable, Lobinière. The cost of this Liberal budget is going to drive up the price of food, of housing, and everything else that Canadians need. The Prime Minister claims that Canada is in a strong fiscal position. Then why are families having such a hard time making ends meet? Home ownership is virtually impossible for young people. Why are 2.2 million Canadians lining up at food banks every month? That's not solid. That's not strong. The Liberal leader has chosen to enrich his friends with an $80 billion deficit. Why is the Prime Minister breaking his promise to spend less by adding fuel to the fire of inflation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, 75% of the new measures in this budget this year are for protecting Canada's sovereignty and for affordability for all Canadians. First point. Second point, this is a budget that invests in Canada. It's a budget that shows confidence in Canada, a budget that's going to put more than $3,000 in the pockets of Canadians. The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, this is a budget that is going to go down in history. This Prime Minister is going to go down in history as the most costly government leader in the history of Canada. I'd like to remind him of something important. Every dollar that he spends comes directly out of the pocket of a Canadian who's worked hard to earn it. He promised to spend less, and yet his deficit's going to be almost $80 billion. And in the Journal de Montréal, we read this morning that the federal government is disconnected from real life. What parallel universe is he living in, the Prime Minister? He doesn't understand that he's fueling inflation with his spending, and it's making life harder for every Canadian. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's not the most costly budget, it's the most ambitious budget. The most ambitious budget for Canada. It's ambitious when it comes to building housing for Quebecers and Canadians, housing across the country, for clean energy, for the future of Canada. This is a budget for the future.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
This Prime Minister's $80 billion deficit will cost each Canadian household $5,400 while avoiding the tax pain he imposes on Canadians. Coming from the guy that set up a $30 billion offshore tax havens for Brookfield when he was chair. He continues to dodge questions on how much money he personally has stashed away offshore while avoiding the taxes he imposes on Canadians. Will he stand up today and tell Canadians how much money he has in offshore tax havens? Just the number.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, this budget tightens tax fairness. Mr. Speaker, this budget cuts taxes for 22 million. This budget cuts taxes on new homes for young Canadians starting out. This budget cuts the carbon tax. This budget grows this great country. Come with us and support it.
The honourable member for Calgary East.
He's avoiding the question like he helped Brookfield avoid taxes. When he imposes higher taxes on Canadians, they have a right to know if this Prime Minister still has money in offshore tax havens. I'll give him one more chance. Will he stand up on his own 2 feet and tell Canadians exactly how much money he has stashed away in offshore tax havens? Just the number.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of my record in the private sector, but I'm deeply honored to serve Canadians. And we're serving Canadians by building this great country, by investing in homes, by investing in energy, by investing in ports, by investing in our future. We are going to grow this country like not seen before. There is a chance for everyone in this House to stand up and support it.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, for a Quebecer, standing up means standing up for the independence of Quebec. We gave this government a chance. You know, they're in a recruitment campaign, and we said, could you eliminate discrimination when it comes to old age security that's paid to people who are age 65 to 74? They get 10% less than those who are 75 and over. All they had to do was say, yes, that's a principle of justice that we can follow. Does he recognize that he simply refused to help retirees? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in this budget, there is more than $80 billion in transfers for seniors across Canada. $80 billion. Yes, older seniors do get more, and that is justice. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, he didn't read his notes, he didn't read his budget. A second chance. We suggested to the government, you know, it's one thing to build homes, but young people have to be able to afford to buy them. And we said to the government there should be a privileged access system to credit for young families who are buying a first home so that somebody can buy those first homes. The government refused that. Will the Prime Minister confirm that he refused to help young people buy a first home with access to credit? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, yes, there is an advantage for young people who are buying their first home, and that is justice. And that's on top of the big investments that we're making in housing. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. The priority of Quebecers and Canadians is also health care. We offered to work with the government to increase health care transfers so that they could follow the increases in spending across the health care system in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada. The government said no. Quebec and Canadian taxpayers are going to be paying more and more in taxes, or they're going to have less money to do other things. Will the government confirm that it refuses to increase the health transfers so that they can follow the increased costs on the systems? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have good news. Good news for Quebec. $12 billion in transfers for health care and $5 billion for infrastructure, for health care infrastructure in this budget. And there's $4 billion for Hydro-Quebec. There's the port in Contrecoeur. There's the second dock in Saguenay. And $500 million for culture, particularly for cultural institutions in Quebec.
The Honourable Member for Middlesex, London.
expensive in Canadian history. The Prime Minister doesn't seem to understand that the more he spends, the more things cost for regular Canadians. Liberals had a chance to lower food costs by scrapping the industrial carbon tax, but they chose to increase food costs by increasing the industrial carbon tax. That drives up costs like fertilizer and farm equipment. So why is the Prime Minister increasing the industrial carbon tax and making food more expensive for Canadians?
Yeah, way to go, Leanne.
Secretary of State for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, if Conservatives vote against Budget 2025, they vote against old age security. They vote against guaranteed income supplements. They vote against the New Horizons for Seniors program.
Wow.
They vote against anti-fraud measures that will protect seniors from financial crime. They vote against a tax credit for personal support workers who care for seniors. And they vote against dental care that over 2 million seniors rely on. Canadians want to know, who are these Conservatives fighting for? Because it certainly isn't seniors.
The honourable member for Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, let me spell this out for the Liberals. No farms, no food. The food professor warns that we're the only country in the G7 that's seen 4 consecutive months of rising food inflation. The industrial carbon tax is driving up wholesale food prices, full stop. The Liberals have introduced another of the most costly and largest deficit budgets in Canadian history. So when Canadians are already struggling to put food on the table, why is the Prime Minister so intent on increasing the industrial carbon tax to make food more expensive?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me quote Sylvain Charlebois. Ottawa has quietly set the stage for some indirect relief, not through grocery subsidies and consumers facing policies, but through infrastructure, trade, administrative reforms that could make the food system work a little more efficiency. Mr. Speaker, our farmers have been asking for some of this stuff for a long time. Stand up and give it to them.
Yeah. Again, through the chair, please. The honourable member for Ponoka Didsbury.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history, and every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. The more they spend, the more things cost. Unfortunately, this Liberal Prime Minister didn't learn anything from the mistakes of the last Liberal Prime Minister. They had a chance in their budget to lower food costs for Canadians by scrapping the industrial carbon tax. Yet they chose to make food more expensive by increasing the industrial carbon tax, driving up the cost of fertilizer and farm equipment. So why is the Prime Minister increasing the industrial carbon tax and making food more expensive for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Emergency Management and Community Resilience.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 delivers a stronger Alberta economy by backing workers and industries and innovators. It supports jobs and Alberta's economic edge. Alberta Chamber of Commerce CEO Doug Griffiths said it's a clear commitment to driving economic growth and job creation. Conservatives can't stand up for Alberta if they won't listen to our business community.
Member for Ponoka Didsbury.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal industrial carbon tax drives up the price of food. Since this Prime Minister took office, strawberries are up 25%, beef is up 25%, coffee is up 20%. The food professor Sylvain Charlebois told us that the widening gap between Canadian and American food prices was driven by one single factor, the carbon tax. He predicts bad news for 2026 and states that we're the only country in the G7 which has seen 4 consecutive months of a food inflation rate increase. Why is the Prime Minister insisting on making food more expensive for Canadians by raising
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Speaker, I am so proud to stand today and support a budget that is growing this country, but is also paying attention to rural communities. And I can tell you, in Newfoundland and Labrador, investment in roads, bridges, hospitals, houses, communities, it matters. And I'm asking my Conservative Newfoundland and Labrador colleagues, are they going to vote for the things that matter to our province?
The honourable member for Chatham-Kent, Leamington.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar this Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians, and the more they spend, the more things cost. The Liberals just had a chance to lower food prices by scrapping the industrial carbon tax. But instead they chose to make food more expensive. By hiking the industrial carbon tax, that makes food, fuel, and farm equipment more expensive. These costs are passed directly onto Canadians at the grocery store. Why is the Prime Minister not scrapping the carbon tax and making food less expensive?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Sport.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives are focused on imaginary taxes, we're building Canada strong, Mr. Speaker. And Budget 2025 invests $51 billion into the Build Community Strong Fund, Mr. Speaker. That's good news for families in southwestern Ontario, like my colleague from that area. This includes money for the Newton Athletic Park in Surrey. It includes the Royal Athletic Park in Victoria. It includes the Hamilton Downtown YMCA. It includes the Hamilton Sportif de Montreal. Mr. Speaker, we're going to build Canada strong, and that includes sports facilities for our communities. I hope that member of Parliament will vote for our budget.
The honourable member for Chatham-Kent, Leamington.
Mr. Speaker, the following is not imaginary. The food professor, go ahead, Mock, said, and I quote, "The gap between wholesale prices in Canada versus the U.S. wholesale prices has widened, and one factor driving that is the industrial carbon tax. Canada is the only G7 country that's had 4 consecutive months of food inflation increases. Farmers, manufacturers, builders across the country are paying more for fertilizers, steel, and concrete, costs that end up on Canadians' plates. While other G7 countries are lowering costs, this Prime Minister is ignoring the experts, increasing the carbon tax, and making food more expensive. Why?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Very often quoted Sylvain Charlebois had exactly this to say about Budget 2025. In fact, he said our investments in logistics and corridors and trade will bring prices down for food. He said, Speaker, is exactly what the food professor has called for.
The honourable member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Mr. Speaker, we now know that this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. The more the Liberals spend, the more life costs. Every economist knows this. The Prime Minister could have scrapped the inflationary industrial carbon tax. Instead, he chose to increase the tax and increase costs for all Canadians. My question to the Prime Minister is simple. Why is he increasing the industrial carbon tax and making our food more expensive?
Why? The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, here's what our government is doing. Last week, we worked with 9 different countries to announce 25 different transactions to bring $6.4 billion to 6 new mining and processing facilities all across this country. Voting for this budget will bring a lot more of that, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, the budget, it's the worst of both worlds. It's a Liberal deficit with Conservative ideas. Nothing for healthcare, nothing for seniors, environmental cuts. It's Stephen Harper all over again. And it's not me who said it, it's the government House Leader yesterday who said it, and I quote, "This is a budget that Conservative voters could love." The Liberals aren't even hiding it, except that Quebecers, they didn't vote Conservative. They didn't vote for cuts to health care. They didn't vote for our seniors to be abandoned. They didn't vote to end the fight against climate change. Why are the Liberals not meeting the demands of Quebecers? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers voted for 44 Liberal members on this side of the House. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you might remember who was president of La Disque in 2003. It was the leader of the Bloc Québécois, and he was in favor of investments in Canadian culture at the time. And now the member is going to tell his members to vote against cultural investments for TV and music in Quebec for our artists. He's saying, no, we don't want those investments in Quebec. The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, this is the budget of climate capitulation. Cuts of 15% to the Department of the Environment. Ending the cap on emissions in the oil and gas sector, tax credits for the oil and gas sector, and more. This morning, the Environment Commissioner was clear. He said that Canada would not be able to meet its greenhouse gas emissions reductions targets for 2030, and we're going even further back by ending carbon pricing. There's more money for the oil sector, less money for the environment. We're heading straight into the wall. Why are the Liberals keeping their foot on the gas? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, I say it every day, our government will continue to fight climate change. And if you look at the budget, you'll see the investments. There will continue to be industrial carbon pricing. We are going to reduce methane emissions, but not only that. If you look throughout the budget, you'll see that we are fighting climate change in every department of the government. We're going to do the work. We will build a strong Canada.
The honourable member for Parry Sound Muskoka.
The Toronto home building industry has released a scathing report on this government's budget, warning of 100,000 job losses in the sector, despite the Prime Minister promising 500,000 homes a year during the election. The government continues to refuse to implement our policy of cutting the GST on all new homes under $1.3 million. Now, housing starts have plummeted and developers are laying off their trained staff because the cost of government is just too high. Why won't the government listen to the experts and cut the GST on all new homes under $1.3 million so builders can get back to work and building the homes that Canadians so desperately need?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, here's the reality check. The Conservative Party of Canada is voting against the largest investment in infrastructure in Canadian history, Mr. Speaker. Thousands of jobs, apprenticeship opportunities, opportunities for our youth, opportunities to train the next generation, Mr. Speaker. Roads, bridges, community centers, hospitals, you name it, major projects in the national interest, homes, Mr. Speaker. None of this happens if the Conservatives vote against the budget. I hope they'll reconsider.
I mentioned this yesterday. This entire program on wanting to help train apprentices. Where are you going to train them? Are you going to train them in a colleges where they have their bench equipment, where they can't actually train in the industry itself, where they need to do their apprenticeship training? They won't have a place to do apprenticeship training because there won't be any businesses because they're all leaving. It doesn't matter if you train people if they have no freaking jobs to go to. But, you know, you guys don't care about that. You only care about the imagery. You only care about lying to people and spending a whole bunch of money. That's going to enrich your friends.
Parry Sound Muskoka.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if spending money could solve the housing crisis, we'd have a surplus right now. And this from a government who named a housing minister who made housing taxes 141% more expensive in Vancouver and also increased the prices of homes by 149%. We're in a housing crisis now, and it's clear this guy doesn't get it. The experts are warning of 100,000 job losses in the sector. So if the government won't listen to us and what we're saying about cutting the GST on homes under $1.3 million, why won't they listen to the experts?
Here. The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the real question is, will the Conservatives support the most aggressive housing budget in Canadian history? Will you? Your new government is proposing the biggest investment in our history in affordable housing, putting Canadians to work, building the affordable housing that we need. We're seeing unprecedented levels of housing starts. We're seeing progress in housing right now, and we're doubling up on that. We're going to build. We expect your support on the budget to do more.
Again, to members, through the chair, I don't have an opinion on this. The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
On Tuesday, Canadians saw the truth about this Liberal government's disastrous housing plan. They promised to build 500,000 homes a year, but turned into a plan to kill 100,000 jobs. Toronto's Build Association says the budget is particularly troubling. Not an actionable plan to reduce housing fees with any urgency. They promised to cut development charges by 50%, but surprise, another broken Liberal promise. Housing sales have collapsed, down 82% in the GTA. Will the Prime Minister finally admit he is not building homes, he's only building a long list of broken promises?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth.
Mr. Speaker, this is a budget that will invest in Canada, invest in young Canadians, invest in Canadian families from coast to coast to coast. We are supporting youth by giving opportunities to help them build skilled trades and access high-paying careers and jobs across the projects, building homes, building out major national projects. We are investing in training and supports for 20,000 youth who are facing employment barriers, 24,000 additional Canada Summer Jobs opportunities, co-ops, internships, and apprenticeships across the country. We hope that members opposite will support young people and their opportunities for jobs.
Good job, good job. The Honourable Member for Newmarket Aurora.
We've heard this before. The recycled ideas in Canada's housing industry continues to fall. Housing sales are down 82% in the GTA. Toronto's Build Association warns that this budget is built on backward-looking data that provides false assurances. In simple terms, builders can build, sellers can sell, and buyers cannot buy. And not only that, this budget will cost 100,000 jobs and commit us to a future with fewer homes and fewer opportunities. Will the Prime Minister come to his senses and finally address the cost of development charges so we can unleash our housing construction?
Yes, the Honourable Minister for Women and Gender Equality, Tourism and Small Business.
Mr. Speaker, when Conservatives talk about affordability, what they really mean are cuts. Cuts to the programs that Canadians vitally rely on. Parents and families know that they can trust our government has their backs. We've strengthened the Canada Child Benefit, providing families nearly $8,000 for children under 6 and $6,570 for children aged 6 to 17. Through the budget, we are making permanent the National School Food Program, which will give parents peace of mind so that they can send their kids to school with a full meal. Mr. Speaker, well, what she was really referring to is the only thing recycled on that side of the House are their slogans, Mr.
The Honourable Member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends costs out of Canadians' pocket. The more he spends, the more everything costs. He promised to lower the debt to GDP ratio, he raised it. He promised to spend less, but he has blown $90 billion, costing every family $5,400. Now Liberal spends more on interest payments than health care, spending $55.6 billion to service debt while Canadians struggle to pay for grocery and housing. When will the Prime Minister stop mortgaging Canadians' future and deliver an affordable budget for Canadians?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, that member has risen in this House many times to address public safety concerns, and I know that his constituents in Brampton have those concerns because they're my constituents too, Mr. Speaker. In this budget, there are historic investments, $1.7 billion to the RCMP. Whoa. We're deploying 1,000 new officers and 1,000 new CBSA agents, Mr. Speaker. But the Conservatives have said they're not going to support it. But it doesn't surprise me since their leader thinks the RCMP is despicable.
So this is where the Liberals can just lie with impunity in the House and not be held to account. Now, we know the leader never said any such thing about the RCMP. He was actually talking about Liberal politicians breaking ethics laws and that they should have been prosecuted by the RCMP and that it was despicable that they were not. He never said anything about the RCMP being despicable. We all know who's despicable, and that would be the RCMP chain of command. And this entire thing about hiring another 1,000 RCMP officers, what they don't tell you is that RCMP's recruiting is in the toilet, just like the Canadian Armed Forces, by 10%, if not more. So this whole adding 1,000 officers, what are they going to add them to? They already have a deficit. They need to meet their existing numbers before they can add another 1,000 officers. I've not heard this mentioned at all anywhere in any of the committees.
The honourable member for Brome, Missisquoi. Mr. Speaker, as a former mayor dealing with infrastructure problems and housing, and it doesn't just affect urban ridings, but also rural ridings like mine, Brome, Missisquoi. The government has committed to investing in housing and infrastructure as part of the Canada Strong budget, a once-in-a-generation investment. Can the Minister of Finance tell the House what steps are being taken to build more boldly and quickly than ever before in ridings like mine? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have all kinds of good news for Canadians, but we only have 30 seconds to explain to Canadians, yes, with Build Canada Homes, we're going to build more affordable homes. And together with the communities, we're going to invest in water and other municipal infrastructure. And yes, we have a fund for health infrastructure, like Quebec asked for. All members in this House should stand up in favor of this generational budget to help the next generation to build Canada strong. We believe in Canada, Mr. Speaker.
So this thing about providing fresh water, are they talking about up north? Where for the past 10 years, they've done sweet FA about giving them water, but now you can trust them to do it? Okay.
For Calgary Centre. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister introduced his first budget, much more costly than Canadians anticipated. A $78 billion deficit is a high hurdle to get over, but the fiscal year is not final yet, and this government has never set a spending target they haven't blown past. Don't worry, there's more debt ahead, and the next 5 years of forecast deficits have doubled under this Prime Minister. And I'll correct the Prime Minister, because 10 years ago under the last Conservative administration, debt servicing was $28 billion and going down. It's $55 billion going up now. So why is the Prime Minister choosing to ignore the inflation he's causing and driving up costs for Canadians?
Here, here. The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, this is a generational budget that will increase Canada's economic competitiveness and prosperity. That's good news for our small, medium and large businesses. The President and CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Candice Lang, says the government has heard businesses call to focus on the economy and has made some tough choices to attract investment. Mr. Speaker, this is about building the strongest economy in the G7. I hope we can count on our colleagues' support.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Well, that wasn't an answer to the question. I think it was a lot of fantasy at the end of the day. But this government, once again, has revised its so-called fiscal anchors. That's another target they keep missing. No problem, just change the definition. This year's anchors are so weak, they're practically meaningless. When you change definition to fit your narrative, you undermine trust and accountability. Canadians deserve stability, not a government that moves the goalposts whenever it suits them. Mr. Speaker, Canada's fiscal position is adrift. Will the minister admit this budget has no fiscal responsibility and his so-called anchors are a political spin? Thank you.
Yeah. Here, here. The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, this government recently announced a 3-year extension of Operation Reassurance, Canada's largest overseas military mission with over 2,000 CAF members stationed in Latvia. Is this member seriously suggesting that Canada should not pass a budget which allows us to give the strongest expression of our commitment to NATO, as Canadians reinforce NATO's eastern flank by contributing to collective defence and cooperative security in the region? Mr. Speaker, Canada is leading a 14-nation multinational brigade there. I would suggest the members opposite join us, support our Canadian Armed Forces.
Sorry, folks. Sticky mouse. So this clown, this Minister of National Defense clown, when he's talking about supporting the Armed Forces members, that mission in Latvia is for 2,200. They can barely field 1,600 because they are running out of people. And they're also burning them out. They only have a limited amount of battalions to push and rotate people through there. And of course, we all know about the equipment issues that they've had because they've had to buy their own equipment. That's 10 years, right? But what he's not telling you is that their intent is to actually reduce the amount of fuel pay that the members get. Oh, they're going to get them a pay raise that they're way beyond having to have had already because they can't live off the economy. You're going to post them somewhere. They have to leave the forces because they can't afford to move. They can't afford to buy a house if you're going to move them somewhere. But what they're doing now is the combat arms guys, they're fucking with their fuel pay. Now, the new fuel pay that was brought in was a system whereby the longer you're in a field unit, the more your monthly fuel pay increases. In the past, you only had fuel pay when you went in the field, right? If you went in the field and you played silly bugger for a week, you got an additional fuel pay each day for being out in the field. It was normal. But this was not much of an incentive for people to actually commit themselves to want to go and employ themselves in a combat unit. I remember not all trades end up in combat units. Some of them are support units and they're not going to be there, but there was incentive to bring them in. And even for Air Force guys to want to go to attack hell units or tactical fighter units, where the demands are more on them. And then if they deploy somewhere in the field, like with the helicopters, they go out in the field like we used to do, play silly bugger ourselves, we would get fuel pay. So what do? You run in the system. Every month that you're in, you get so many points, or every 3 months that you're an combat unit, you get so many points, and that increases your monthly fuel pay. And then you go to an on-field unit, well, you don't get fuel pay. And then you come back to the field unit after being away for 5 years, your fuel pay kicks back in. It doesn't go away. Those other 5 years that it had, now you start getting more on top of that. There's an incentive. You know what? I'll go back to tech. Hell, they're getting rid of that. They're getting rid of that because they futz around like this all the time. These people do not care. And remember, they're still requiring 3 jobs for the guys when they get in with a failed vaccine injury support program. They and of course they've done nothing except for a crying CDS telling them, "Oh, sorry, we hurt your feelings." Meanwhile, nothing for the people they actually fired and ruined their lives of, and the ones that they abandoned duty of care to. No, none of that. No, for her it was like, "Oh, I'm sorry if you were offended by being called dirty names." So let's get back to this thing.
The honourable member for Provencher.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. The more he spends, the more things cost. The Prime Minister promised Canadians that he'd keep the deficit less than $62 billion. Instead, it's $78 billion. He told Canadians he'd get rid of the consumer carbon tax, but instead, the industrial carbon tax is set to rise and make food even more expensive by driving up the cost of fuel, fertilizer, and farm equipment. Why is the Prime Minister increasing the industrial carbon tax, and why does he want to make food more expensive?
Oh, give it to him, come on! The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, a working-class Canadian voting Conservative would be like a chicken voting for Colonel Sanders. My goodness, Mr. Speaker, when I took the people who live in rural Nova Scotia, they want simple things. They want good jobs, better health care, lower taxes, and this budget delivers all 3. You don't have to take my word for it. Listen to a statement from the provincial progressive Conservative government in Nova Scotia, who congratulated the Prime Minister on his budget based on more money for health care infrastructure, for housing and development, and for tax incentives that are going to create good jobs for the people who live in my communities. Conservatives from different parts of the country know this is a good idea. The only Conservatives who seem to disagree are the ones who sit on the other side of this House.
The honourable member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Témiscouata. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have tabled the costliest budget with the biggest deficit in Canadian history outside of the pandemic. It will drive up the price of food, housing, and everything Canadians need. And it's our families who are paying the price at the grocery store for the industrial carbon tax that this government has hiked. A few weeks ago, I asked for an answer on behalf of a constituent in La Pocatière who was forced to choose between housing and feeding her family. We didn't get any answer. Why is this Prime Minister hiking the industrial carbon tax and making food more expensive for my constituent and all Canadians? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I'm a bit surprised by my colleague's reaction. In this budget, there is help for Lévis and La Pocatière in this budget, and I met with people from Napierville. In my riding, we have one of the biggest borders in Quebec. $1.7 billion to strengthen border security. That's what this budget has for all of us, and I'm sure that other constituents are supportive of this too. The Honourable Member for Côte-du-Sud. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals had a chance to ease the burden on Canadians, but since this Prime Minister took office, prices have skyrocketed. Strawberries up 25%, beef 25%, and coffee 20%. It's unbelievable. The industrial carbon tax is adding to the price gap with the U.S. and is likely to keep food inflation high. This is according to Professor Sylvain Charlebois. He said it'll stay that way for years to come. Mr. Speaker, once again, why is this government hiking this tax and making food even more expensive for our families? The Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, we're going to build Canada strong with generational investments in infrastructure. Budget 2025 holds $5 billion for an infrastructure and health fund, which will contribute to building new hospitals, ERs, care centers, and medicine faculties, to name a few. This is what the provinces and territories asked us to do, and that's what we've done. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Richmond Arthabaska. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. Conservatives are for tax cuts to leave more money in the pockets of Canadians. Do you know where the Liberals have chosen to cut taxes? Try to stay in your seat here. Private aircraft and luxury yachts. This is no joke. It's for Liberal cronies. That's where they're cutting taxes. I would invite people to speak to single parents, to go to grocery stores and speak to seniors, whether they want tax cuts or lower food prices.
Minister of Indigenous Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd invite my colleague on the other side of the House to talk to all of his constituents, because in this budget, we decided to protect the position of First Nations. It's important also that we included infrastructure investments for water and housing. It's also important to invite the opposition to work with us to protect First Nations, and I know that there are some in his riding. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, the federal government is disconnected from reality. She talks about First Nations, but I was talking about luxury jets and yachts. So the answer had nothing to do with my question. There are people suffering and struggling, nothing for our seniors. Who decided to cut taxes on luxury yachts and jets? The Honourable Member. Well, it's tiring when a member from Quebec stands up and suggests that aerospace is not important in Quebec. That industry is very important. Bombardier announced 600 new jobs in Quebec yesterday. My colleague, as a former colleague of François Legault in Quebec City, should be calling François Legault and telling him what he thinks about this news.
The Honourable Member for Haldimand and Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, in a democracy, everything can be debated, but some moral lines should never be blurred. Protecting vulnerable children must remain one of them. The Supreme Court recently struck down a one-year mandatory prison sentence for two men who possess hundreds of sexual images of children, some as young as 3 years old. These are real victims of abuse and trauma. Why is this government more focused on protecting the charter rights of pedophiles rather than defending the dignity of children?
Yeah, way to go.
Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, plain and simple, child abusers should face the toughest penalties under Canadian law. Mr. Speaker, we are bringing forward legislation that is going to protect children. I hope the Conservatives can support it because their past record is that they haven't supported the online harms legislation. They haven't supported lawful access tools for law enforcement so we can catch child predators. They put politics before the safety of our children, Mr. Speaker.
So it's important to know that these bills that they keep mentioning that the Conservatives didn't support, there was a big reason for that. Now, bills go to committee, and in committee, they get torn apart and fixed up because the Liberals always try to push things in through those bills that will allow them over everything and everyone, which is why Bill 63, although it was couched as a save the children from online stuff, was actually a totalitarian bill to gain complete control over the internet. That's right. They would want to know everything about you and be able to shut you down. It was one of their first tries, but they hit it as let's save the children, because everybody seems to ignore the fact that children are supposed to have parents to dictate their safety. Parents are responsible for their children, not the state, but this is how they sell it to you, because these cultural Marxists are of the authoritarian, totalitarian halfwits who actually believe the state is responsible to feed your children as opposed to you, right? So they take that ability from you to be able to feed your children, and then they chastise you for ridiculousing them for doing so. All right, let's listen some more.
Honourable member for Haldimand Norfolk.
The sexual exploitation of children is one of the clearest and most horrific crimes imaginable. Recently, the Supreme Court struck down the one-year mandatory sentence for possessing child sexual abuse material. Yet this government refuses to use Section 33 of the Charter, the notwithstanding clause, to restore the minimal penalties for pedophiles. Why is this government choosing to protect the charter rights of predators over the safety and the innocence of our children?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, like I've said before, child predators are the worst criminals in our country, and they should face the toughest sentences. Mr. Speaker, that is exactly why we're bringing forward new legislation, so that we can toughen sentences and make sure child predators stay behind bars, Mr. Speaker. But I would like the Conservatives to promise that they will support that piece of legislation, and they will support C-19 that is currently before this House, because they have not supported us in the past when it comes to helping children and to protecting children. So please put your politics aside and support the children of this country.
Again, through the chair, please. The honourable member for Cumberland Colchester.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 is a generational investment in our economy, in our industries, and in Canadians. Canadians are paying lower prices for cellular services, a 40% decline in prices over 5 years. But these bills still eat into the pockets of Canadians. Budget 2025 has proposed measures to lower costs for Canadians and to improve competition. At a time when Canadians are concerned with rising costs and keeping their monthly bills affordable, can the Minister of Industry tell us how the government is working to lower cell phone bills?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
To thank my colleague from Cumberland Colchester for her important question. She and I are laser focused, and this government laser focused on making sure that we bring down costs in the telecom sector, because we took the right decision this summer to uphold the decision of the CRTC to increase competition in the telecommunications sector. We said also that we would be hawkish on competition, so we will do more in this budget to increase competition and make sure that we reform our telecommunications sector. Thank you so much.
The honourable member for Edmonton Northwest.
The Liberals have introduced the most costly and largest budget deficit in history outside of COVID. The cost of this Liberal budget will drive up the cost of food, housing, and everything else Canadians buy. The young families, seniors, and veterans in Edmonton Northwest are having to make hard choices as the snow falls. It's costing more to heat their homes and feed their families. But every day in this House, the Liberals say families are just imagining higher living expenses by their taxes and increased spending. So why is the Prime Minister breaking his promise to spend less and pouring more inflationary fuel on the fire?
Good question. Good question, Bill.
The Honourable Secretary of State for Defence Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Budget 2025 will enable Canada to step up to meet the moment to include $82 billion for defence and security. And here's a fun fact, Mr. Speaker. Stephen Harper's 2009 budget, adjusted for inflation, is actually the biggest deficit budget in Canadian history, with little to show for it. We'll take no lessons from the Conservatives.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener South, Hespeler.
Adjusted for the inflation that they caused. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' new budget is generationally expensive. It is historically expensive. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends will come out of Canadians' pockets. The more they spend, the more things will cost. Either through taxes or inflation in the future, the cost will come. $80 billion is $2,000 for each man, woman, and child in our country. That's $2,000 for my 3-year-old daughter and $2,000 for my 1-year-old son. Why should they have to pay this generational debt the Prime Minister is saddling us with? Why is the Prime Minister breaking his promise to spend less?
Honourable Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
This budget invests in lowering the cost of living and creating jobs, including $2 billion for the Critical Minerals Sovereign Fund. Critical minerals are in our phones, computers, solar panels, medical equipment, and more. Canada is rich in minerals, with projects in ridings held by Conservatives, Bloc Québécois, NDP, and Liberals, including in my home, the Northwest Territories. These investments mean good jobs, including in Ontario, stronger communities, and keeps Canada a leader in technology, defence, and healthcare. The Mining Association of Canada has applauded the budget, and I hope members opposite will too.
The Honourable Member for Elmwood Transcona.
Mr. Speaker, this government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar this Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. The more they spend, the more things cost. Nearly $80 billion in deficit spending. That means $450 a month coming right out of Canadians' pockets. This will make it even harder for Canadians to buy groceries and pay their bills. Instead, we get a bloated bureaucracy and high-priced consultants. Why does this Prime Minister believe he can spend hardworking Canadians' money better than they can?
The Honourable Minister for Northern and Arctic Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we're focused on securing our sovereignty in the North and the Arctic with a $1 billion infrastructure fund for airports, seaports, all-season roads in North and in Northern Manitoba. We're focused on a $2.3 billion clean water for Indigenous communities. They're voting against an Inuit Nunangat University to build skills and hopes for Northern youth. We are focused on building, protecting, and empowering Canadians. They need to get on board.
The Honourable Member for Honoré Mercier.
Mr. Speaker, residents in my riding have expressed concern about the cost of living. Budget 2025 is full of great initiatives that will empower them and Canadians across the country.
Clearly, there are many in this House who would like to hear the member from the top.
Mr. Speaker, my colleagues are very excited to hear me today. Budget 2025 is full of great initiatives that will empower them and Canadians across the country to get ahead financially. Increasing competition is one way to achieve affordability. And in Budget 2025, there are several pro-affordability measures related to making the financial sector more competitive. Can the Secretary of State for the CRA and financial institutions inform this House about how the government is making life more affordable for Canadians by reforming the financial sector?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for that important question. In our generational budget, Canada's new government is making life more affordable for Canadians by making our financial system more competitive and innovative. Among other things, we are providing Canadians with more financial options by helping credit unions and smaller banks grow and compete, advancing open banking, which will make it easier for Canadians to find lower fee checking accounts, cheaper loans, and higher interest savings. On this side of the House, we're laser focused on making life more affordable for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
The Prime Minister told Canadians that they need to sacrifice more to pay for the Liberals' inflationary deficit. But the Liberals sure aren't sacrificing much, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, an Ottawa gossip rag feted the Liberals for attending a lavish deficit cocktail party hosted by rich Ottawa insiders, lobbyists and media firms who were thrilled with the billions of tax dollars for their wealthy clients and owners. Will the Liberals apologize for popping champagne corks with rich lobbyists to celebrate a massive inflationary deficit while Canadians can't even afford a case of beer?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Rural Development.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Canada wants the investment that this budget affords all Canada needs, and we're going to stand in support of rural Canada, Mr. Speaker. And in Saskatchewan, I'm going to tell our MPs, the Conservative MPs, Saskatchewan is watching, and all we're asking you guys to do was what you've been doing for the last 10 years on the budget vote. Sit this one out so that Saskatchewan can finally get help from the province to reach its full potential. Come on board.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
There was much hype about this budget. Much has already been made public in the pre-budget announcements. My question is not about is what is not in the budget. The impact of the 15% cut across most departments, including the loss of 40,000 workers, is buried in buzzwords like streamlining, modernizing, and recalibrating. Will the Prime Minister tell Canadians what programs are being cut, which ones will end when the funding sunsets, and how people in our communities will be impacted? Canadians deserve to know.
Hear, hear.
Le Ministre des Finances.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the very important question that she asked. I think she will have seen in the budget that we remain true to our values, Mr. Speaker, Canadian values. We made sure that while we do a budget which is focused on the future and investment, that we protect people, that we protect childcare, that we protect pharmacare, that we protect dental care. You know what, Mr. Speaker? Because we understand on this side of the House that affordability and supporting Canadians at a time like this is essential, but at the same time we're going to build a great future, Mr. Speaker. We're going to take care of Canadians today because we believe in Canada.
Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
It's increasingly clear that this government's budget fails to deliver the transformational change promised and fails to meet the moment. It fails to provide any relief right now for the millions of Canadians suffering through an affordability crisis. 60% are having trouble meeting their monthly expenses. Half are using credit cards or borrowing money for daily needs, paying interest rates of 19% or more. Why did the Liberals fail to provide concrete measures to help the millions of Canadians who need help now?
Le Ministre des Finances.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad for the question from my colleague. It's a very important question, and he will remember that the first thing we did for Canadians was to cut tax for 22 million Canadians because we understand that affordability is at the heart of the concerns of Canadians. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you will have seen in the budget an initiative that I know he supports because we talked about that, Mr. Speaker, when we made automatic benefits to Canadians, Mr. Speaker. That's the way we want to do. We want to cut red tape, support Canadian, and build a great country together.
Alors, ça met fin à la
And that ends oral questions.
Thank God. Well, the cost of living question. Of course, that's going to get some applause from the conservative side as soon as a liberal actually admits that they have increased the cost of living. It's amazing on how they have all these brand new schemes of all the stuff they're going to fix that they managed not to fix for the past 10 years. But trust them, they'll get it done this time. Oh, yeah, even though now it's going to cost you like 5 times more than what it would have costed the first year they got elected in 2015. They had to steal from Canada for 10 years straight, enriching themselves and their friends and making sure that tons of industry just left Canada or just decided not to show up because they cancel all these huge industrial programs. And this whole budget is only going to work if $1 trillion in investments comes to Canada. Yes, this imaginary $1 trillion worth of investment is going to come to Canada now, because apparently there's $1 trillion worth of investment out there from other GFANs, green scam associated industries that want to come to Canada, that want to lose massive amounts of their profits to pay into carbon taxes and other green fees and stuff that, that they want to be part of. Oh yeah, no, they're not going to come here. They'll go to another country where they don't have these stupid laws. They'll do absolutely nothing for the environment except make certain people rich. That's right. All these scams are a scam. People who believe that carbon dioxide is actually going to dictate the weather on this planet fails to realize that this little orbiting ice ball that we have around the sun is frozen most of the time than it is thawed, and it's all dependent on the sun. The sun's space weather that it throws at us, this particle ejections, of which we're going to hit a couple of waves there by the end of this week. But that's what keeps this planet warm. Space weather, radiation coming through the atmosphere, warming the planet up. And without this, and without the electrical connection that also happens between all the other orbital bodies that inhabit the solar system, all these things affect the weather, and they think these tiny little humans recycling some of the carbon out of the ground and punting it out in the air is actually going to do something. It's not like we are pulling up with huge dump trucks dumping fresh carbon dioxide into the planet. No, the carbon dioxide we have here is a finite amount, and we're actually probably losing it because over time a planet loses its atmosphere as well. So we're actually reducing all our noble gases, all our atmosphere. And we have no control over that. And of course, the whole point of the scam is that we have trees and swamps all across Canada. We're already net bloody zero. We don't need to do all these bloody scams. But yes, we do, because Carney and his friends need to be rich. And that's why we will be forever saddled with green schemes, climate change, disastrous policies, anti-human policies to just make people poor. Now, if somebody was actually a real politician, they would say, how can I make sure to take care of my constituents while putting in this policy? But no, they don't. They just go straight for the policy. Everyone be damned, and we will just lie straight to your face every day in the lower house. Most people don't realize that they can get away with it. All right, we will finish off with today's supplementary to the ORDAP. And hopefully tomorrow we're not going to have some streaming issues at the beginning like I did today. I have no idea. Well, yeah, so it was either my VPN or I hit the wrong button on the Atom multi-stream in my OBS. And you other streamers out there probably know what the hell I'm talking about. The rest of you probably don't care. Thanks for coming out. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. This channel only works with people watching it. And I can see the viewership racking up all the time. It's outstanding. Thank you again for supporting this veteran. We will see you next time. Bye.
We will spend less on wasteful spending so we can invest in our country and build our country. We'll spend less on wasteful spending. We'll spend less on wasteful spending. We'll spend less on wasteful spending. We'll spend less on wasteful spending.
In addition to cooking the books, the Prime Minister also rigged his GST rebate on housing to make sure that 95% of home buyers would not qualify for any break at all. Zero, zip, Zilch. And the Prime Minister, meanwhile, puts a new rising tax on steel, aluminum, glass, cement, concrete, all the things that go into making a home. In other words, the industrial carbon tax is a housing tax. With Liberals already having doubled housing costs, will the Prime Minister axe the industrial carbon tax so Canadians can afford a home?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the Leader persists and doubles down on these fake, imaginary taxes that exist only in his head and on the talking points that he hands out. What I will tell you is this is a budget where conservative-minded voters, people who think of voting conservative in elections, you know what they like about it? They like the hope. They like the ambition. They like the economic growth. They like bringing this country together from coast to coast to coast to invest in our potential, to invest in our young people, and to grow this country to be the best in the G7, Mr. Speaker. That's what they like.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he says it's imaginary, but it's in his budget. Does that mean the budget is a fictional document? Here it is on page 106, strengthening the industrial.
The honourable member may continue now that the prop has been put away.
Mr. Speaker, they say their budget is a prop and its contents are imaginary. We're in real trouble. Homes take steel, they take aluminum, they take concrete and cement and glass. The industrial carbon tax drives all those things up. With our youth unable to afford homes, why don't they get rid of this tax so that we can bring down the cost of housing?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, you know what this budget does? It builds communities. It builds opportunities for young people in our communities. It ties this country together in a common refrain of hope and optimism and investing in ourselves. We're going to be investing in new homes. We're going to be investing in housing for young people. We're going to build it with that Canadian steel. We're going to build it with that Canadian lumber. We're going to build it with that best thing that we have, that Canadian ingenuity that exists in the youngest and the oldest, the skilled tradespeople of this country. We are going to build Canada. Conservatives like that, Liberals like that. Let's build the country.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
After the Prime Minister's depressing speech demanding young people make more sacrifices, I think the Liberal House Leader asked ChatGPT to write him up a little poem about how he could inject hope into his message. It didn't work, Mr. Speaker. Young people need houses for them to have hope. Houses are needed to raise families. Houses are needed to build equity and collateral and credit history. But the Prime Minister insists on applying an escalating industrial carbon tax that will raise the cost of everything that goes into making a home. So with the Liberals doubling housing costs already, why won't they get rid of this tax?
The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know housing is top of mind for young Canadians, and we have heard them loud and clear. Budget 2025 delivers on affordable housing for young Canadians. It focuses on affordable housing and co-ops. It delivers on GST for first-time homebuyers, up to 47,000 homes that will see a big reduction in GST. Building all of these homes creates jobs for young people in the trades, great jobs for young Canadians. This budget delivers affordability for young Canadians.
Member for Wellington, Halton Hills North.
Mr. Speaker, the last Liberal budget had a fiscal anchor of deficits of less than 1% of GDP. This budget doubles those deficits, averaging 2% of GDP. The last Liberal budget had a fiscal anchor of declining debt to GDP. This budget increases debt to GDP. Will the government admit that its fiscal anchor is weaker than the previous Trudeau government's.
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Speaker, I know they're having a bad week over there, but yesterday we tabled an historic budget to build our economy for Canadians, by Canadians, so we will never be reliant on one country again. We will spend less on wasteful spending so we can invest in our country and build our country, our economy, into the strongest economy in the G7. Mr. Speaker, from Canadians from coast to coast to coast, support our budget. It's time for us to come together in this House like Canada. Time for the party opposite to support our budget.
The Honourable Member for Wellington, Halton Hills North.
Mr. Speaker, last July, bond rating agency Fitch warned that a material rise in the debt to GDP and a material rise in our deficits could lead to a credit downgrade. This budget doubles deficits and leads to ever-increasing debt to GDP. Will the government acknowledge that it is putting this country's credit rating at risk, not only to mention that it's saddling younger Canadians with a mountain of national debt?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Speaker, speaking of young Canadians are looking at this budget for generational opportunities. We are unlocking new markets for them. Budget 2025, we're getting young Canadians, young entrepreneurs ready to get export ready through our SMA readiness program. Secondly, once they're export ready, we will launch the Can Export program to support them, attend trade shows globally to showcase their goods. And once they have orders ready to go out, EDC will step in to support them to get into new markets around the world. This is how we're helping young Canadians and young entrepreneurs access new markets and create jobs here at home. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We will take no lessons from the Conservative, but we'll take lessons from history.
Still there? Good. Oh, got some echo. Wanted to let you know, because I forgot to mention it, we are first on 9 o'clock tomorrow morning at Blazing Cat Fur Fridays. And then we're followed at 10:30 for the nap. Should have said that before I logged off. So let's just finish with a Blazing Cat Fur Friday intro. So you guys have a look at that and end of the stream, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye. Do this now. Fade.
Yeah.